My high school sweetheart left me to have fun at college and is now furious I won't take her back. Back in high school, Hannah and I clicked right from the start. It wasn't anything dramatic, really. We just found ourselves together a lot, sitting next to each other in classes without even planning it, ending up partners for projects. It was easy, comfortable. People started seeing us as a unit before we even got around to seeing it ourselves. By junior year, it was official, we were Gavin and Hannah, inseparable. Life was pretty straightforward then. School, homework, hanging out. I wanted to go into engineering. Hannah was all about graphic design. We'd talk about the future as if it were a given. College was part of the plan, but in a vague, distant sort of way. The kind of future talk that feels safe because it's all hypothetical. But then, senior year rolled around, and suddenly, college wasn't just a distant idea. It was happening. Hannah got accepted to her dream school, a big-name place, miles away from our small-town life. I was happy for her, really happy, but it was the first time I felt a crack in the solid thing we had. She was leaving, and I was staying, going to a local college. We promised each other it wouldn't change anything. Promises are easy when you don't want to face the reality. A few months into her freshman year, Hannah came back home for a visit. I was excited to see her, expecting it to be like old times. But she was different. Not in a bad way, just more grown up, I guess. And then she dropped it on me, the open relationship thing. She said it calmly, like she was just stating a fact. There was no discussion, no asking how I felt about it. She'd made up her mind. She wanted to have fun in college without the ties of our relationship holding her back. She even talked about it being safe, for our future together. I remember feeling like the ground had been pulled from under my feet. I didn't understand. We had been everything to each other. First loves, first real relationship, and then, out of nowhere, this. I couldn't just nod and agree. It went against everything I felt about us. I tried to explain that. I tried to argue, to make her see how much this would hurt me, how much it was asking of me to wait for her while she went off with other guys. But she didn't budge. She said I was being immature, that I'd get over it and we could talk when I was ready to be rational. Those weeks after she went back to college were some of the longest of my life. I kept replaying our conversation, wondering if I'd been too emotional, if there was a way to be okay with it. Then, when she called 2 weeks later acting as if nothing was wrong, as if our entire conversation hadn't shattered my world, and casually mentioned she had already been with other guys, I broke down. It was a deep, raw kind of pain I had never experienced before. I told her it was over, that I couldn't do this. She accused me of being immature again, but I knew I couldn't go through with her plan. It wasn't just about being with other people, it was about respect, trust, and how she so easily disregarded my feelings. That was the last real conversation we had for a long time. She tried to contact me after that, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. It hurt too much. I had to move on, had to try and put myself back together without her. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Moving on wasn't easy. I threw myself into work in college. I picked up extra shifts at the job and took on more classes than I probably should have. It was my way of keeping busy, to avoid thinking about her. My social life took a hit. Initially, I avoided going out, especially to places where I knew I'd run into mutual friends. The thought of having to talk about the breakup or, worse, run into her, was something I couldn't handle. Slowly, though, I started reconnecting with old friends, the ones who knew me before Hannah. It was refreshing to be around people who didn't see me as one half of a pair. They got me out of the house, made me laugh, and helped me feel a bit more like myself again. I won't lie and say I didn't think about Hannah. I did, a lot at first. But as time went on, those thoughts became less frequent. I started to see the breakup not as the end of something but as the start of something new for me. It was a tough lesson in love and life, but it taught me a lot about myself, about what I want from life and from a partner. 3 years passed quickly. I graduated from college, got a decent job, and even moved into a small apartment. Life was good, stable, and Hannah became a distant memory, a part of my past that helped shape who I am but no longer held any power over my present. One evening, I was at home doing the usual after-work routine. I had just finished eating dinner, a simple meal I cooked myself, and was considering what to do next. Maybe watch some TV, or catch up on some reading. Then, out of nowhere, the doorbell rang. It was around 7 p.m. I wasn't expecting any deliveries, and my friends usually text before dropping by. I walked to the door, flipping the porch light on as I went. Peering through the peephole, my heart skipped a beat. It was Hannah, standing there as if the last 3 years hadn't happened, as if we hadn't ended things on a note that still made my chest tight when I thought about it too much. Seeing her there was like being thrown back in time. Hannah, with her casual stance, looking expectantly at the door, probably imagining a different kind of reunion. One where I'd throw the door open with a smile, happy to see her. But that wasn't going to happen. I remember standing there for a moment, frozen, not sure what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore the doorbell, pretend I wasn't home, and just let her leave. But another part, the part that had spent years with her, felt like I owed it to both of us to face this. So, I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and opened it, but I didn't step out or invite her in. I just stood there, looking at her, waiting for her to say something, to explain why she was there after all this time. The look on her face told me she hadn't expected this kind of reception. She seemed taken aback, maybe even a bit hurt, but there was also a hint of the same confidence that had driven her to make the choices she did back in college. It was clear she had rehearsed this moment in her mind, expecting a warmer welcome, expecting that enough time had passed for old wounds to heal, or at least be forgotten. There wasn't much to say, not really. I was still processing the shock of seeing her, and maybe she was too, in her way. She said she wanted to talk about us. My first reaction was confusion. Us? What us? There hadn't been in us for a long time. Not since she decided that college was her time to explore and left me trying to piece together what was left of my self-esteem and our relationship. Hannah began talking about how she had changed, how she realized she made a mistake by letting me go. She talked about wanting to start fresh, to rekindle what we had. I listened, not because I believed in what she was saying, but because I needed to hear her out, to understand her reasoning. It was clear she hadn't thought about how her actions affected me, about the pain she caused. She talked as if we could just erase the past few years and pick up where we left off. I wanted to scream, to tell her how much she hurt me, how difficult it was to get over her, to rebuild my life without her. But I didn't. Instead, I calmly explained that too much had happened, that I couldn't just forget and move on. Hannah seemed to struggle with my response. She couldn't understand why I couldn't give us another chance. I listened, more out of shock than interest, as she outlined a future for us, filled with plans and promises. It was as if the years apart had never occurred, as if her actions and choices had no weight or consequence. The more she talked, the clearer it became that this wasn't just unrealistic, it was impossible. In the end, I simply told her that what she was asking for wasn't something I could do. The person I was with her was a memory, just like the relationship she was trying to resurrect. After Hannah left that night, word got out fast. I woke up the next morning to texts and missed calls. They were from friends, a couple of cousins, even an aunt I hadn't talked to in months. The gist was the same: Hannah's back, and she's upset. What did you do to her? It took me a minute to get my head around it. How did so many people get involved overnight? I spent the morning just replying to texts. I tried to keep it short. Hannah and I haven't been together for years. She made choices, and so did I. I'm moving on. That was my go-to response. Some replied with a quick okay or a thumbs up emoji. Others wanted more. They asked questions like, "But didn't you love her? Or aren't you being too harsh?" It was draining. I could feel the frustration building up with every text. It wasn't just about explaining my side, it was about defending my right to feel hurt, to say no to a situation that wasn't right for me. The hardest part was dealing with the reactions from Hannah's family. They were shocked. According to them, Hannah had been painting a picture of us that was far from reality. They thought we were on a break or working through some college phase. The idea that we had been completely apart for years was news to them. When I told them the truth, there was silence on the other end of the line. Some hung up, probably thinking I was the one lying. It was a mess. Friends were split. Some knew the real deal. They were the ones I'd been close with, the ones who saw me through the breakup and its aftermath. But others, more acquaintances than friends, took Hannah's side. They saw me as the villain, the guy who wouldn't give a high school sweetheart another chance. I heard phrases like "people change and forgiveness is key." It made me question if they even understood what forgiveness meant. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about respect, about mutual understanding and honesty, none of which Hannah had shown me. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. I turned off my phone. I was being judged and talked about over something that was deeply personal, something that had taken me years to come to terms with. I knew I had made the right decision for myself. Still, it stung to know that not everyone saw it that way, that some were so quick to take Hannah's word over mine, without considering what I had been through. Hannah was on a mission, and her strategy was clear. She wanted everyone on her side, and she wasn't above twisting the truth to get what she wanted. I began to hear from friends about how hard Hannah was taking the breakup. According to them, she was a mess, barely able to get through her day. I knew Hannah, she was tough. This didn't sound like her at all, but the stories kept coming. Then, she targeted my family. My mom mentioned Hannah stopped by. She was all tears, talking about how lost she felt without me. My mom is all heart. She fell for it. By the time I heard about the visit, my mom was full of questions. Why wouldn't I consider giving Hannah another chance? She seemed so genuine. It got to a point where everywhere I turned, someone was singing Hannah's praises, telling me how much she had changed, how much she regretted her past actions. I met Valerie about a month after the last mess with Hannah. It was at a local coffee shop. I was there to grab my usual morning fix, just a regular black coffee to start the day. The place was busier than usual, which was odd for a Tuesday morning, and I found myself standing in a longer line than I'd anticipated. Valerie was in front of me. I hadn't noticed her at first, focused as I was on the menu, even though I knew exactly what I was going to order. It was when she turned slightly, looking for her wallet, that I really saw her. She apologized, thinking she'd bumped into me, but she hadn't. We exchanged a brief smile, and that was it. Or it should have been. The line moved slowly, and somehow, we started talking. It was about something trivial at first. I think she made a comment about how slow the line was moving and how she needed her caffeine fix before a big meeting. I agreed, mentioning I was there for my usual morning ritual before heading to work. The conversation flowed effortlessly from there, which was a surprise. I'm not usually the type to strike up conversations with strangers, especially not in the past few months. By the time we reached the counter, we'd covered our jobs, our favorite coffee, and discovered a mutual love for old school rock music. She ordered a caramel macchiato, and I stuck with my black coffee. We moved aside together to wait for our orders, still talking. When our drinks were ready, I found myself not wanting the conversation to end. It had been a long time since I'd felt this at ease talking to someone. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I asked her if she wanted to sit down and drink our coffee together. To my relief, she said yes. We chose a table by the window. Our conversation continued, touching on everything from our favorite movies to our least favorite work tasks. It was natural, easy, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy in the moment. As we talked, I found myself admiring her. Valerie was passionate about her job in graphic design, had a sharp wit, and her laugh was contagious. I learned she had moved to the city a few years ago and had worked hard to get where she was in her career. Her determination was evident, and it was one of the many things that drew me to her. But as much as I was enjoying our conversation, part of me couldn't help but feel guilty. I was still dealing with the fallout from my relationship with Hannah, and here I was, enjoying the company of another woman. It felt like I was moving on, or at least trying to, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. Despite these thoughts, I couldn't deny the connection I felt with Valerie. It was different from anything I'd experienced before. When it was time to leave, we exchanged numbers. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months, but also conflicted. Meeting Valerie had been unexpected, but it was a reminder that life goes on, and maybe, just maybe, I was ready to let it. One afternoon, I heard a knock on my door.